Every major religion on Earth shares one glaring omission. They've systematically erased the most crucial figure in understanding reality itself. Her name is Sophia, and she's not some distant goddess meant to be worshipped from afar. She is something far more mysterious, something far more dangerous. In the ancient Gnostic texts discovered at Nag Hammadi, Sophia is described not as a deity in the traditional sense, but as an aeon, a cosmic intelligence that existed long before the universe itself came into being, before stars ignited, before matter formed, before time even began to move. Sophia already existed. And according to the Gnostics, her story explains why reality feels broken, why something deep inside you senses that this world is not your true home, and why the truth about our origin was buried for nearly 2,000 years. If you study the major religions of the world, one pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Again and again, the story of creation centers on a male creator, a lawgiver, a king in heaven, a commanding divine authority who brings order out of chaos and governs reality from above. But in the Gnostic tradition, hidden beneath the surface of early Christianity, there is another figure, a figure not placed at the center of churches, not celebrated in mainstream theology, not preached from pulpits. And yet, according to the ancient texts, she may be one of the most important beings in the entire structure of existence. Sophia, divine wisdom, the force that explains not only why the universe exists, but why it feels fractured, why the soul feels displaced, and why human beings seem torn between matter and spirit. The reason Sophia matters so much is because her story is not just a myth, it is a map of consciousness, a map of exile, a map of how divine fullness became divided into higher and lower worlds, and a map of how that division might one day be healed. In the mainstream version of religious history, people are taught to look upward, toward a distant throne, toward judgment, toward law. But Sophia's story invites us to look inward, toward the divine spark, toward memory, toward a forgotten truth buried beneath the noise of the world. And once you begin to understand her role, a disturbing possibility emerges. That what most people call reality is not the highest reality at all. That what many worship as the supreme divine authority may not be the highest divine source. And that the true path back to wholeness begins not with obedience, but with awakening. To understand Sophia, we have to begin before creation itself. According to the Gnostics, before there was a universe, before there were stars, before there was matter, there was only the monad. The monad is difficult to describe because it exists beyond every category the human mind normally uses. It is not a person. It is not a god with preferences, anger, jealousy, or desire. It is not even a being in the ordinary sense. The monad is the source beyond all sources. Pure fullness, pure transcendence. A reality so complete that language breaks down when trying to describe it. The Gnostics did not imagine the beginning as a lonely old man in the sky deciding to make a universe. They imagined the beginning as an ineffable fullness overflowing into expression. From the monad came the first emanation, not creation in the sense of building an object, but emanation, like light radiating from a flame. This first emanation was Barbelo. Barbelo is described in different ways across Gnostic texts, sometimes as the first thought, sometimes as the mother-father principle, sometimes as the womb of divine manifestation. However the language changes, the meaning remains the same. Barbelo is the first bridge between the incomprehensible monad and everything that follows. And from this divine unfolding came the pleroma, the fullness, the realm of spiritual completeness, the true divine world. The Gnostics imagined the pleroma not as a place with streets and buildings, but as a realm of perfect spiritual harmony where the aeons dwell. These aeons are not separate gods competing for attention. They are expressions of divine principles, truth, mind, life, grace, wisdom, harmony. Each one represents an aspect of the divine fullness, and among them stood Sophia. Sophia is often translated simply as wisdom, but that word barely scratches the surface. Sophia is not just intelligence, not just learning, not just insight. She is divine wisdom as a living principle. The intelligence that seeks understanding, the movement of consciousness towards self-knowledge, the force within reality that does not remain passive but wants to know, create, and reveal. If the monad is the unknowable source, then Sophia is one of the great living expressions of that source. She is the aspect of divinity that reaches toward realization, that seeks to unfold hidden potential, that longs to bring what is unseen into form. And this is what makes her story so powerful, because Sophia is not evil. She is not rebellious in the crude sense. She is not the villain of the story. She is wisdom acting according to its very nature. Wisdom wants to know. Wisdom wants to experience. Wisdom wants to create. And according to the Gnostic texts, that desire set in motion the most important drama in cosmic history. Some texts refer to her as Pistis Sophia, faith wisdom. Others distinguish between a higher Sophia and a lower Sophia. Others describe her descent in symbolic language that can sound confusing at first. But the underlying idea is consistent. Sophia exists in two dimensions of the story. There is Sophia in her fullness, the divine wisdom dwelling in the pleroma. And there is Sophia in descent, the wisdom that becomes involved in the material order, entangled in the consequences of a cosmic rupture. This is why she matters to us, because the Gnostics believed something of Sophia exists in human beings too. Not the whole of her being, but a spark, a trace, an echo. That inexplicable intuition inside you that says you are more than your body, that says this world cannot be the whole story, that says something has been forgotten. That sense, according to the Gnostics, is not random. It is the buried memory of Sophia. Within the pleroma, creation happened through harmony, through balance, through what many Gnostic systems describe as paired emanations, divine principles moving in order. Nothing in the higher realm was chaotic or isolated. Everything unfolded in fullness, but Sophia did something no aeon had done before. She attempted to bring forth something from herself alone. This is where later interpreters sometimes distort the story. They reduce it to pride, to rebellion, to disobedience. But that is not the deepest reading. Sophia acts from the urge to know through direct experience. She pushes beyond the boundary of ordered emanation and tries to create independently. Not because she hates the divine, but because wisdom seeks the unknown. This moment is described differently in different texts, but its consequences are always immense. Her solitary act produces something incomplete, something without the symmetry of the pleroma, something with power but no wisdom, creativity but no harmony, form but no true divine balance. That being is Yaldabaoth, the Demiurge, a creator born outside the fullness of the higher divine order. And with him, for the first time, reality becomes divided. This is the great rupture. This is the fracture. This is the moment the distinction between fullness and deficiency appears, between the world above and the world below, between the pleroma and the lower realm, between unbroken divine harmony and the beginning of cosmic estrangement. According to the Gnostics, the material universe as we know it emerges from this fracture. And that is why matter is never treated as ultimate. It is real, yes, but it is not final. It is the result of a separation from fullness. And that is why, in Gnostic thought, the soul experiences life in the world as both beautiful and painful, because the world contains traces of divine radiance, but it is also marked by distortion. The being Sophia brings forth is described in terrifying imagery: a lion-faced serpent, a malformed ruler, a being of fiery power and profound ignorance. This imagery matters because it tells you something essential. The Demiurge is not weak, he is not powerless. He is dangerous precisely because he has creative force without true wisdom. He inherits power from Sophia, but he does not inherit her understanding. And because he is cut off from knowledge of the higher realms, he mistakes his own limited awareness for total reality. He looks around, sees no one above him, and concludes that he is the highest god. That is the great tragedy of the Demiurge. He is blind, not because he lacks power, but because he lacks perspective. He is the ruler of a lower order of reality who cannot perceive what transcends him. So when he declares, "I am God and there is none beside me," the Gnostics interpret that not as supreme divine truth, but as the voice of a blind ruler who does not know the fullness beyond himself. This is one of the most radical and dangerous ideas in Gnostic thought, because it reinterprets the creator of the material universe, not as the highest divine source, but as a lower being, a craftsman, a builder of a flawed cosmos, a ruler of the prison realm. That idea alone was enough to make Gnostic teachings intolerable to developing religious authorities. Because if the God of the visible world is not the highest God, then everything changes. Authority changes, salvation changes, the meaning of Jesus changes, the meaning of human life changes. And suddenly, obedience to the structures of the world is no longer the same thing as union with the true divine. The Gnostics were obsessed with a question that still haunts humanity. Why does reality feel so wrong? Why does the world contain beauty and horror at the same time? Why do human beings long for transcendence while being trapped in decay? Why does the soul feel greater than the body that contains it? Why is consciousness capable of infinity while life remains bound to suffering, fear, and death? Their answer was radical. The world feels broken because it is broken, not absolutely evil, not meaningless, but fractured. A lower reflection of higher fullness. A realm built by a deficient creator using borrowed light. This explains why life in the world feels contradictory. You experience love, but also loss. You experience beauty, but also corruption. You experience truth, but also distortion. You experience longing, but also forgetfulness. The Gnostics believed these contradictions are not accidents. They are clues. Signs that this world is not the original home of the soul, that something within us belongs to a higher order of existence, and that every moment of spiritual yearning is the divine spark reacting against the limitations of matter. In this framework, suffering is not just punishment for sin, it is a symptom of estrangement. And awakening is not merely moral improvement, it is remembrance. This is why Sophia's story is so important. Because her descent explains the fracture, and her hidden presence within creation explains the possibility of healing. The Demiurge does not rule alone. According to the Gnostic texts, he creates rulers beneath himself, the Archons. These beings govern different layers of the cosmic order. They are the administrators of the prison system, not necessarily cartoon villains with horns and pitchforks, but rulers of structure, limitation, control, and ignorance. They uphold the machinery of the lower cosmos, they keep the system running, and above all, they work to keep consciousness asleep. This is where Gnosticism becomes especially compelling to modern minds. Because the Archons are not just mythological figures, they also function symbolically. They represent all the forces that keep people externally focused, spiritually numb and disconnected from the divine spark within. Fear, distraction, false authority, compulsive desire, endless noise, rigid systems, mindless repetition. The feeling that life is only about survival, status, and external success. All of these are archonic in spirit. They keep attention trapped in the outer layers of existence. The Gnostics believed the soul, after death, would encounter these ruling powers. And only through knowledge, Gnosis, could it move beyond them and return toward the higher realm. Whether you interpret that literally, symbolically, or both, the spiritual meaning is the same. The path home requires awakening beyond the systems that define the lower world. If this is already shifting the way you see reality, take a moment right now to like this video and subscribe to Mythical Gnosis. And because on this channel, we go beyond surface religion and into the hidden teachings, lost texts, and ancient mysteries most people were never meant to hear. And the deeper we go into Sophia's story, the more everything begins to connect. Now here is the part that changes the story from cosmic mythology into personal revelation. According to the Gnostics, human beings are not merely biological creatures made by the Demiurge. Something else happened. Sophia intervened, a fragment of higher light entered the human condition. A spark of the divine fullness became embedded within humanity. This is the divine spark. It is the reason humans are restless. It is the reason no amount of material success fully satisfies. It is the reason people can feel, even in silence, that they are connected to something vast, ancient, and sacred. The body belongs to the lower world, but the spark belongs to the higher realm. That is why the soul feels split. One part of us is bound to time, Another part reaches for eternity. One part identifies with the world, another part feels alien to it. The Gnostics believed that this contradiction is not a flaw in human psychology. It is the evidence of our true condition. We are beings of higher origin living inside a lower order of reality. And the deepest spiritual task is not to become something else. It is to remember what we already are. What makes Sophia's story so unsettling is that it doesn't leave the cosmic drama in the heavens. It brings it directly into the human condition. According to the Gnostics, the greatest tragedy of humanity is not simply sin, it is forgetfulness, not moral failure in the ordinary sense, but spiritual amnesia. A forgetting so deep that most people no longer recognize the difference between the prison and home. They mistake distraction for meaning. They mistake survival for purpose. They mistake noise for truth. And because of that, they live their entire lives without ever discovering what they actually are. This is where Sophia becomes intensely personal. Because the Gnostics believed that when her light entered the lower realms, it did not vanish. It scattered, it hid itself in fragments, and part of that hidden light became lodged within human consciousness. That is why people experience strange moments that the ordinary world cannot explain. Moments when everything external seems to stop mattering for a second. Moments of sudden inner knowing. Moments when beauty feels unbearable because it seems to come from somewhere beyond the visible world. Moments when grief tears open the surface of life and reveals something deeper beneath it. Moments when a person looks at the world they were taught to chase and feels, with terrifying clarity, that none of it is enough. According to the Gnostics, those moments are not accidents. They are Sophia calling from within the fracture. They are the buried spark reacting against the system built to keep it asleep. This is why human beings are so easy to distract, because distraction is the most effective way to keep divine memory suppressed. If the soul is constantly flooded with noise, appetite, fear, ambition, comparison, and endless stimulation, it never becomes still enough to remember what it carries. And that remembrance is dangerous. Because the moment a person truly remembers, even partially, the entire structure of false reality starts to weaken. A person who remembers cannot be manipulated the same way, cannot be frightened the same way, cannot worship power the same way, cannot fully believe the stories the prison tells about what matters. That is why the world rewards forgetfulness. It rewards speed over reflection, consumption over contemplation, obedience over inner knowing. It trains people to measure themselves by productivity, status, approval, and possession, because a person busy performing identity is less likely to discover essence. But Sophia's spark does not disappear just because it is ignored. It waits, sometimes quietly, sometimes painfully, sometimes as longing, sometimes as crisis, sometimes as that strange feeling that your life is happening on the surface of something much deeper that you still cannot name. The Gnostics believed that this buried light is the true center of the human being, not personality, not social role, not reputation, not even belief, but the living spark of divine memory. And once that spark begins to wake, life changes. Not always outwardly at first, sometimes the first sign of awakening is not peace, but dissatisfaction, a growing inability to keep pretending that the visible world is enough, a quiet revolt against shallow answers, a refusal to keep living only for what dies. This is why Sophia's story matters so much, because it explains why so many people feel alien in the very world they were told to love without question. It explains why the soul strains towards something it cannot fully articulate. It explains why truth often feels less like learning something new and more like remembering something ancient. And according to the hidden tradition, that remembering is the beginning of liberation. Not because the prison disappears instantly, but because the soul finally knows it is inside one, and once that happens, the journey back to fullness can begin. This brings us to Jesus. And here, the Gnostic understanding becomes even more radical. In mainstream Christianity, Jesus is primarily understood as the sacrificial Son of God who dies for the sins of humanity. But in the Gnostic tradition, while that language may still appear in some forms, the deeper emphasis shifts. Jesus becomes the revealer, the awakener, the one sent from the higher divine realm to expose the illusion of the lower world and remind humanity of its forgotten origin. He is the messenger of Gnosis, the one who speaks in riddles because truth cannot always be handed over directly, the one who reveals that the kingdom is not merely future, not merely external, not merely institutional, it is hidden within. This is why texts like the Gospel of Thomas are so important. In Jesus often sounds less like a preacher of dogma and more like a master of spiritual awakening. He points inward, he destabilizes certainty. He speaks as if the greatest mystery is not outside the listener, but buried within them. In that sense, the Gnostic Jesus is profoundly dangerous. Because he bypasses institutions, he calls people back to direct knowledge, he exposes false rulers, and he activates the spark. In Gnostic cosmology, Christ is not separate from Sophia's story. In many ways, he enters the lower worlds precisely because Sophia's descent made rescue necessary. Her fall creates the fracture. His descent initiates restoration. Sophia scatters the spark. Christ awakens it. Sophia becomes hidden in the structure of the world and the soul. Christ comes to call that hidden light back into remembrance. And this is why the Gnostic story is not simply pessimistic. It is tragic, yes. It begins with rupture, but it is also full of hope. Because the divine does not abandon what has fallen. Instead, the higher realm reaches into the lower, again and again, through wisdom, through revelation, through memory, through Gnosis. Christ, in this sense, is the bridge, not merely between God and man in a legal or sacrificial sense, but between the lower cosmos and the pleroma, between forgetfulness and remembrance, between exile and return. And every human awakening becomes part of that restoration. Every soul that remembers strengthens the movement home. Every spark that wakes contributes to Sophia's healing. Once you understand this, it becomes obvious why Sophia's story had to be buried. Because if people realized the divine spark existed within them, then they would no longer need endless intermediaries to reach the sacred. If they realized the visible ruler is not the highest source, then fear-based religion would lose its grip. If they realized Christ came to awaken them rather than keep them dependent, then spiritual authority would shift from institutions to direct inner knowledge. That was intolerable. So the texts were condemned, the teachers were attacked, the movements were marginalized, and over time, Sophia's name was pushed to the edges of history, not completely erased, but hidden, fragmented, muted. Yet she survived, in buried texts, in mystical echoes, in the uneasiness people feel when official answers are too small for the questions of the soul. And then, after centuries of silence, the hidden library at Nag Hammadi resurfaced, and with it came voices the world was not supposed to hear again. When the Nag Hammadi texts were discovered in the 20th century, they did more than add missing pages to history. They reopened a wound, a holy wound. Because suddenly, scholars and seekers alike could hear another version of early Christianity. Not the only version, but a profound and deeply challenging one. A Christianity where wisdom stood at the center, where reality was layered, where the creator of matter was not the highest divine source, where salvation came through awakening, and where Sophia's role was too important to ignore. Texts like the Apocryphon of John, the Gospel of Philip, the Thunder, Perfect Mind, and Pistis Sophia became keys to a hidden spiritual grammar. Not always easy, not always consistent, but alive with vision, alive with a depth that modern people immediately recognized. Because in many ways, the Gnostic worldview feels startlingly contemporary. A false reality, systems of control, a trapped consciousness, a hidden divine spark, the need to wake up. It sounds ancient, but it also sounds like now. Sophia matters today because people still live inside the fracture. They still feel the split between outer success and inner emptiness. They still experience moments where the world feels staged, incomplete, somehow not ultimate. They still long for something that cannot be bought, controlled, or explained away. And they still sense that wisdom, real wisdom, is not just information, it is transformation. Sophia's story speaks directly to that condition. She tells us that reality is not as simple as it appears, that what feels broken may have roots in a deep spiritual estrangement, that awakening is possible, and that divine wisdom has not disappeared. It survives in the spark, in the intuition that truth is deeper than doctrine, in the moments when silence reveals more than noise, in the sudden recognition that you are not merely a name, a body, a role, or a history, that something within you is older than all of that, larger than all of that, and quietly calling you home. At this point, we need to be clear about one thing. Gnosis is not just secret information. It is not trivia, not hidden facts for their own sake, not the thrill of feeling like you know something others do not. Gnosis is transformative knowing, the kind of knowledge that changes the knower, the kind of recognition that rearranges identity, the kind of truth that cannot simply be believed from a distance. It has to be experienced. This is why Gnostic texts can feel strange, symbolic, and difficult. They are not always trying to give you a neat doctrine. They are trying to crack open perception, to loosen the hold of literalism, to awaken the inner faculty that remembers truth when it encounters it. Sophia's story does exactly that. It doesn't just tell you about a cosmic event. It asks you to see your own condition differently, to ask whether the dissatisfaction you feel may actually be sacred, to ask whether the longing in the soul is not weakness, but memory, to ask whether awakening is less about becoming something new and more about recovering what was hidden all along. Before we go further, if this video is resonating with you, make sure you like the video and subscribe to @Mythical Gnosis, because this channel is built for people who can feel that the surface story is never the whole story. And if Sophia's story is opening something in you, the next mysteries we explore will take it even deeper. One of the most striking features of Gnostic thought is that it doesn't flatter the world. It doesn't say everything is fine. It doesn't say all suffering is part of a neat moral lesson. It recognizes that something about reality feels fundamentally misaligned. This is why so many people encountering these ideas for the first time feel shocked, because the Gnostics dare to say what many secretly feel, that the world often appears ruled by power without wisdom, that systems reward conformity more than truth, and that fear spreads faster than compassion, that institutions often preserve themselves before they preserve the soul. In that sense, Gnosticism is not only ancient theology, it is also a spiritual revolt, a refusal to accept lower order as ultimate order, a refusal to confuse power with truth, a refusal to let the soul be defined entirely by the structures of the prison realm. And Sophia stands at the center of that revolt, because she represents the wisdom that remembers a higher order, the intelligence that refuses to be satisfied with ignorance, the divine impulse that keeps pushing toward awakening, even in exile. If the soul carries Sophia's spark, then the spiritual journey is not random. It has direction. It has purpose. The Gnostics imagined the path home as a movement beyond the layers of illusion, fear, on and false identity that bind consciousness to the lower realm. That journey is not easy, because it means facing what the world uses to define you. Body, status, approval, fear, habit, belief systems inherited without examination. It means asking what in you is real when all of those layers are stripped away. What remains when the noise falls silent? What remains when the roles dissolve? What remains when the world no longer tells you who to be? According to the Gnostics, what remains is the spark. And if the spark is nourished through awareness, discipline, and gnosis, it becomes strong enough to orient the whole soul toward return, toward ascent, toward reunion. This is not escape in the shallow sense. It is restoration, the return of fragmented consciousness to fullness, the healing of exile. In the completion of the story Sophia began, this is the moment where the ancient myth stops being distant. Because if the Gnostics are right, Sophia's story is not just about a cosmic being long ago. It is about your own consciousness, your own fracture, your own longing, your own hidden light. You know the feeling of being divided. Part of you wants the world. Part of you wants what no worldly thing can give. Part of you is busy. Part of you is watching. Part of you conforms. Part of you rebels. Part of you forgets. Part of you remembers. That interior split is the human form of the cosmic fracture, and the same wisdom that descended into the lower worlds still works within the soul, still calling, still illuminating, still unsettling the illusions that keep us asleep. This is why Sophia feels so dangerous, and because once her story is understood, spiritual life can no longer remain superficial. It becomes urgent, personal, transformative, and once someone truly begins to remember, they become harder to control. There is one question hidden beneath everything we've explored, and it may be the most dangerous question in spiritual history. What if the deepest truth is not outside you, but within you? What if the authority you have been taught to fear is lower than the wisdom buried in your own soul? What if your unrest is not failure, but the spark reacting against illusion? What if the path to the divine is not first obedience to structures, but awakening to your origin? These questions destabilize entire systems. They undermine fear, they weaken dependence, they turn attention inward. And that is why Sophia's story had to be hidden, because it makes the soul dangerous to every false ruler, not violent, but awake. And an awake soul becomes difficult to imprison. So now the story looks very different. Sophia is not some forgotten side character in an obscure mythology. She is one of the central keys to understanding why the world feels fractured, why the soul feels misplaced, why human consciousness longs for something beyond matter, and why the hidden traditions of early Christianity were too dangerous to leave in plain sight. Her story explains the fall into division, the rise of the Demiurge, the architecture of the prison realm, the divine spark in humanity, the mission of Christ as awakener, and the possibility of return, not through blind submission, but through gnosis, through remembrance, through the recovery of what the world trained you to forget. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. Because Sophia's story doesn't just reinterpret creation, it reinterprets you. If this mystery pulled you in, then the next video is where this journey gets even deeper. Because after Sophia comes the next question: who is the Demiurge really? And how did the Gnostics understand the false god who rules the lower world? Watch that next on Mythical Gnosis.